Lorick here.
Guzikowski here.
Seifert here.
Chandler here.
Item 3, approval of minutes from the March 28th, 2023 meeting. Take a moment to look them over. If there's any questions or corrections. If there are none, I'll look for a motion.
Seifert moves to approve the minutes of March 28th, 2023.
Guzikowski will second.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Hanna.
And I.
Shinsky abstain.
Lorick, aye.
Guzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, I.
Item number 4, review and discuss report on recent Common Council actions. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The council took the following actions at their April 3rd meeting, approved an ordinance amending Table 170304C and Sections 171013J through 1013Y in Chapter 17, Zoning and Sign Code of the Municipal Code, in relation to tattoo studios and medical diagnostic labs. Also approved an ordinance approving a conditional use permit for a tattoo studio on the property at 8632 South Marketplace. Approved an ordinance rezoning the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue from M1 Manufacturing to B4 General Business. Did not approve an ordinance rezoning the property at 8950 South 27th Street from B2 Community Business to B4 General Business with a conditional use permit for vehicle rentals. But they did approve a resolution approving a certified survey map submitted by Matthew Maring Anderson Ashton for the properties at 6340, 6448, and 6460 South Howell Avenue, and 239 and 325 East College Avenue. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Item number 5, review and discuss report on recent Board of Housing and Zoning Appeal actions. There were none. Item 6, review and discuss report on recent quarterly Parks and Recreation Commission actions. Carrie?
The Parks and Recreation Commission had a meeting after a couple of canceled meetings from the last report. They held a meeting on April 6th and discussed a comparison of fees with surrounding communities. That's fees that are charged for various items in relation to rentals for the parks. They also reviewed a proposal by Oak Creek Youth Football for the use of neighborhood parks for football purposes, and also reviewed proposed changes to the scope for the Abendschein Park Pavilion project. Mouthful. Those changes will actually be presented to the Common Council very shortly, if not at the next meeting. If there are any questions, happy to entertain them. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. That brings us to item 7, new business. 7A is a zoning text amendment. Review proposed amendments to table 17.04 sub C, non-residential district permitted and conditional uses, and section 17.1018 of chapter 17, zoning and sign ordinance of the municipal code related to research and development facilities in the B4 general business, LM1 light manufacturing, and M1 manufacturing districts. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we discussed at one of the previous meetings, actually, there is a tenant that wishes to move into the property at 140 East Rawson Avenue that is considered a research and development facility. With the recent rezone that has been approved for that property, research and development facilities would not necessarily be considered allowed uses in the B4 General Business District. However, we realize that there is no real definition for such facilities, even though they would be commonly associated with the LM1 and M1 manufacturing districts. So there's 2 proposals in this text amendment. One is to allow for them in the B4 general business, LM1 light manufacturing, and M1 manufacturing districts, and also to propose a definition so that everybody is aware of what a research and development facility entails. The proposed definition is as follows. The conduct of research and development, testing, assembly, repair, and controlled production of non-toxic products or commodities in various fields of science, such as but not limited to chemistry, biotechnology, pharmaceuticals, medical instrumentation or supplies, communications and information technology, electronics and instrumentation, computer hardware and software, transportation, education, and engineering. Facilities in this use category do not involve the mass manufacture, mass fabrication, mass processing, or mass sale of products. excludes the use of animal husbandry, including dogs, poultry, or monkeys, and heavy equipment such as construction equipment, instead research, development, testing, assembly, repair, and controlled production. That is quite the definition, but it is an amalgam to try and get at what we would allow for those research and development facilities. Wants to be broad, but it doesn't want to go over into things that would necessarily be concerning for the city. Hence the exclusion of animal testing and for heavy equipment usage. If there are any other concerns or additions, any revisions to this proposed definition, happy to consider those. If not, there is a suggested motion for Plan Commission consideration on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Are the applicants here? Do they have any comments?
This is something that is being presented by staff tonight.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So we will move to Plan Commission. Any questions, comments? Starting from my left with Commissioner Hannah.
Honestly, I have to think a little bit if there is something else we need to add, so I just need some time. You can go to the next person.
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
No questions.
I do have a question about the animal husbandry.
Yes,
Should it be all animals? Why just these three?
it's
types?
just including those specific animals. It's not limited to those animals.
Oh, it's
It's
not.
pretty much
Okay.
excluding all animals.
All animals. Okay, thank you.
If we need to make that clear, though, we can certainly do so. There is a concern, however, that some medical testing is done on things like rats or mice. They could be used on other small animals like that. We don't want to get into the situation where we have large scale or possibly, that stepping stone to the human trials necessarily in this category. It's up to the Plan Commission whether you want to include all animals or if you want to limit it to certain ones.
Oh, this is my 2 cents, I guess. I would actually exclude all living creatures, not animals, just that. Because sometimes they do experiments on human cells or human organs. So there are researches on not just animals. So this is another medical facilities do that. So I don't know if any medical industry gonna come here and open one of those medical researches and start doing their facility researches here, and the disposal or those I don't know what you call it, for them to dispose of their hazardous materials. It just could be a concern how they do that and how much regulation and how much they follow the regulation for that disposal. So this is something could be concerning on the long run, and how much of safety that would impose if they have not enforced safety inside and outside.
I
Because-
don't think that we can say all living things because that would exclude plants and plant cells. So I would say that we can exclude all animals, we can exclude human testing, but we probably shouldn't get down into the minutia of, let's say, cells or cellular material.
Okay, well, you can present it, at least you understand where I'm coming from,
Yes,
so.
yes, I do.
Okay. That's all what I have.
Yeah, I would support putting all animals in there as well. But that would be my only comment. So unless there's any other questions or comments, we will look for a motion.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends to the Common Council that Table 17.0304 paren C and Section 17.1018 of Chapter 17 Zoning and Sign Ordinance of the Municipal Code be amended as proposed after a public hearing.
Hannah seconds.
Roll call beginning with Commissioner Kipczynski.
Chinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Thank you. Item 7B is plan review. Review site and building plans submitted by Eric Polinsky, Eyesore Junk Removal, for an accessory building on the property at 6773 South Howell Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for an accessory building on the property. It is zoned M1, and accessory buildings that are in excess of 250 square feet per code do require Plan Commission approval. So this is a 12 by 24 by 14 height accessory building. The use of the property, although it is zoned M1, is for a residence. And it does appear that the location of the proposed building meets setback requirements. On the screen is the proposed site plan and a recent aerial photo of the property. There is a requirement in code for the height of the the building to not exceed the height of the house or the principal building up to a maximum of 12 feet. We don't have the exact information about how tall the principal building is in this case, which is the house. However, as mentioned, the proposed height of the shed is 14 feet. Exterior building materials are okay per code. They are proposed to be engineered wood siding. But there are a couple of things to keep in mind with this existing property. As mentioned in the staff report, there's a bit of history with this property. We just want to make everybody aware that while we're not looking for historical, clearing of any possible violations or anything like that, what we just want to make sure everybody is aware of is that this property has not been approved for any conditional use permits. So business operations that would not be allowed per a home occupation haven't historically been approved on this property. So outdoor storage, contractors' shops or yards or anything like that, those have not been approved for this property. In 2008, there was a permit issued for an addition to the existing garage that's on the property. There was a condition attached to that permit that says it was for storage of personal items and equipment only. There's no storage allowed for any business use of the property. There is a note here that a gazebo was constructed. They did actually replace some impervious surface with some lawn area, and that's to be commended. However, there wasn't a permit issued for the gazebo, so that's more of an information item for the applicant to let them know that they really should be going and getting a permit for it. We don't have any information on open or green space percentages. There's nothing in the files for historic percentages on this property. Quick calculations show that we should be okay with the minimum 30% requirement. There's also a note in the report about historical imagery and looking at the filling and outdoor storage activities of the property throughout the years. It does appear that there was some encroachment on the property to the west that has been kind of corrected a little bit. But we do still see some encroachment, and we just want to make everybody aware, including the applicant, that activities do need to be restricted to this property and not cross property boundaries. It's probably just one of those things where you don't know exactly where the property line is, just making everybody aware of it. There also are no historic approvals for the operation of a junkyard or contractor's shop or yard on the property, also just making everybody aware that this is a primary residence, even though it is zoned M1. So with all that in mind, there is a proposal for a shed. This is what the shed would look like. It is a tough shed, so it's kind of a pre-manufactured building. And there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to say anything? The applicant present? Or just wait for questions? Okay. We will go to the commission then. Starting on my right with Commissioner Chandler.
I do have a question for the applicant.
And then we'll need John Mike. And then just state your name and address, please.
Linsky, 6773 South Howell Avenue.
One of my questions is in regards to the principal structure that's on the property. Do you know what the height of that is?
14 and a half feet high. No, not on the house.
Not on the house?
I thought you were, yeah.
Okay.
No, not on the house.
You need John Mike if you make comments.
I know it's much taller, you know.
And then just name and address too, sorry.
Yeah, I'm DJ Wenger. I'm the salesperson for Tough Shed located at 6280 South Howell. The building height for the building that we are proposing will be 14 feet. So it will be lower than what his principal structure is if you were to visually look at it.
Okay, so am I understanding correctly, the principal structure of the house is taller than this 14.5-foot structure you placed on the
Yes,
property?
that is correct.
Okay. Okay, and then another question about the storage encroachment challenges to the west. Can you provide any feedback about that?
Part I'd like to
Thank you.
Do you have a concrete slab underneath this? Or you are going to pour a slab or underneath this?
Oh, my apologies. Can you pick him up on the mic? Is he being picked up by the mic?
Yes, I'll be pouring the slab myself.
Thank you. That's it.
No questions.
No questions, thank you.
And nothing here too.
I just have a question. I don't know if it's for the applicant or for Carrie. The condition number 2 says it's used for personal items only. Is any storage in this shed, is there planned to do any business operations or is it all personal? It's all personal. Okay. Okay.
Mowers and lawnmowers and
Okay. Thank you. So if there's no more questions or comments from the commission, we'll look for a motion.
Seifert moves that the planning commission approves of the site and building plans submitted by Eric Polinsky, eyesore junk removal for an accessory building on the property at 6773 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements remain in effect. 2, that the accessory building is used for the storage of personal items only. No business use of the building is approved. 3, that all required building permits are obtained for the shed and a gazebo. 4, that all final plans, site building, and so forth are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
Roll call, and I will start. Lorick, aye.
Excuse me, we
Oh,
do need a
sorry.
second.
Guzekowski, a second.
Thank you. Roll call, and I will start. Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Chinsky, aye.
That brings us to item 7C, Master Sign Plan Amendment. Review a proposed amendment to the existing master sign plan submitted by Tom Donahue and Dr. Paul Schisler, Slante Chiropractic, doing business as the Joint Chiropractic for the multi-tenant commercial building on the property at 8645 South Howell Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you. We do have the wrong zoning on here. I apologize for that. The correct zoning is actually B4 general business. It is not located within a PUD. Apologies for that typo. This is to amend the existing master sign plan, which was established for the property in November 2016 under a previous ownership. There were variances made to the current owner for Calvin Trader Jewelers in 2018 and 2019. However, the proposal before the Plan Commission tonight specifically affects the tenants of Tenant A, the Joint Chiropractic. It will also update the allowances for the remaining tenant spaces so that everybody is pretty much allowed the same signage for the rest of the building. It is only pertinent to the east elevation at this time. The east elevation is what most of the signage is allowed for. Each of the end cap tenants is allowed an additional sign. However, there are no signs that are allowed on the west elevation. So in this graphic, what we're talking about is the second tenant, the one immediately adjacent to Papa John's. It's identified as number 2. And this is what the proposed sign is. The reason that we are asking for a sign plan amendment for the 5-tenant building is because the existing plan allows for a maximum of 19.4 square feet with a maximum height of 1 foot 4 inches. Unfortunately, that includes the backer plate per the zoning code, and that was what put this above because the backer plate is 2 feet. So if the Plan Commission recommends that this, or approves the master sign plan amendment, it would allow for this particular sign to move forward. Staff have no concerns with the proposal. And with that information, there is a suggested motion for consideration on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to say anything? Okay. The applicant indicated that they will wait for questions, have no comments. So we'll go right to the commission, starting on my left with Commissioner Hannah.
I have no question.
No questions, thank you.
No questions.
No questions, thank you.
And I have no questions either. I have no concern. I did see the comment that it would make their sign more comparable to the ones that are existing. So I think this is a good change. With that, with no other questions or concerns, I will look for a motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves amendment for the master sign plan submitted by Tom Donahue, Dr. Paul Fischler, and Chiropractic, doing business as the Joint Chiropractic, for the multi-tenant building, commercial building on the property located at 8645 South Howell Avenue, with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code and conditional use permits requirements remain in effect. 2, that permits are issued for signs prior to installation. 3, that all detailed, revised, and finalized plans are submitted in digital format to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications.
Before we have a second, there is a typo. There are no conditional use permits attached to this property. That's another typo. I apologize. So it's just that all relevant code requirements remain in effect.
As stated by Carrie.
Seipert seconds.
Roll call, beginning with Alderman Guzekowski.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Hannah, aye.
Chinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye. That brings us to item 7D, lighting plan review. Review lighting and related plans submitted by Ray Zukauskas, MATC, for the baseball field lighting and sound system on the property at 6665 South Howell Avenue. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the MATC property. Wow, I'm just batting 1,000 here. I apologize. That is the wrong map. Having a bad day today, apparently. So this is the MATC property, regardless of what that map shows that we're speaking about. It is zoned I-1. There is a conditional use permit on the property. Speaking of batting 1,000, we're talking about a baseball field. So how appropriate is that? And the lighting is for 6 poles, 70 to 80 feet tall, 60 fixtures in all. And each of the fixtures will be at a maximum of 5,700 kelvins, and there are no other changes to the proposed ball field. The ball field itself is located in the southwest corner of the property. There are no surrounding residential properties. However, you will note that these are 70 to 80 feet tall, so they will be taller than all the buildings in the area. That does require FAA approval, and that letter has been requested. The Plan Commission does need to approve of the height of these poles in particular, as well as the maximum kelvins, as code requires 5,000 to be the max. However, lighting for baseball stadiums is typical at 5,700. They don't actually make these fixtures to go any lower. So those are the 2 considerations in this request. There was more information provided in your packet that I am showing on screen, but there is a suggested motion for consideration for approval. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make any comments? Okay. The applicant indicated no. So we'll go right to the commission, starting on my right, Commissioner Chandler.
I do have a question for the applicant.
We'll just need your name and address, please.
Dan Raredons, Inspec Incorporated, lead engineer, home address 6049 South New York Avenue, Cudahy, Wisconsin. And I'm going to introduce Virginia, sub-consultant on the electrical for me.
Virginia Depius, electrical engineer at Ringadoo Chateau. Address is 8756 Westlake, Greendale, Wisconsin.
My question is in regards to the submission to FAA. Any feedback yet?
Yes, we've heard back from the FAA. Everything's approved. We just, we'll submit the as-built, exact locations, latitude and longitude, when it's built. So yes, we've gotten FAA approval.
Okay. And then could you also share a little information about the color temperatures at 5700 Kelvin?
Yeah, so the lights are specified at 5700 Kelvin temperature, which is mimicking the actual sun temperature, which is slightly over 5,778 to be exact. So that is the intent, to kind of provide that natural light setting for the field itself. Anything lower than that, you start getting into the warmer temperatures, which then we have to increase the number of fixtures, and the pole heights would stay, but we'd have to increase the light output.
Thank you.
No, I don't have any questions right now. Looks good.
Pretty straightforward.
Can I make one other comment? So we did confirm that, similar to the Oak Creek High School field as well, is the same color temperature, to kind of give perspective as to what we are designing.
No other questions, thank you.
No, I was just looking at the map here to see if there is any resident in the area that will impact the at night lighting or anything from that sort. It doesn't seem that there is any.
No,
within the
it butts up
vicinity.
against the FedEx
Okay.
building, as well as all the fixtures are full cutoff.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
And I have nothing to add. I mean, I have no concern if the FAA approved it and you're using kind of the standard sport field color of the light. So with that, we will look for a motion.
One quick question for Carrie. Do we have to include anything about the FAA in this?
No, it's
Okay.
included in all required permits and approvals need to be obtained prior to installation.
Thank you.
And I move that the Plan Commission approves the plan submitted by Ray Dukoskas, MATC, for MATC baseball field on the property at 6665 South Howell Avenue with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements are in effect. 2, that all required permits and approvals are obtained prior to installation. 3, that all final plans are submitted in digital format for review by the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of permit applications.
Kuzikowski will second.
Roll call beginning with Commissioner Siebert.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Krasinski, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Kuzikowski,
Thank you. And that brings us to item 7E, a conditional use permit. Review a request submitted by Mohammed Abouain, Smart Wash LLC, for a conditional use permit for vehicle rentals on the property at 1155 West Anderson Court. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This property is zoned M1, and the request is for vehicle rentals or U-Haul type trucks on the property, and they will include at least one trailer that is part of this request. The state emissions testing portion of the business that is on the property does not require a conditional use permit. However, it does sort of affect the overall usage of that tenant space, so it is included here just as information. No changes to the building are proposed. No changes really to the site are proposed. We'll break this down just a little bit. The emissions operation is anticipating about 5 to 8 emissions tests per day. It's on a first come, first served basis, and each of the tests is about 3 minutes each. All operations on the site, this is actually the only tenant that's in the space right now, would be 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Saturday, so emissions testing and U-Haul rentals would be during those hours. Shared customer parking would be on the north. They are identifying one parking stall for each of their uses on the north, although there are over 20 stalls that are currently provided for all tenants. Again, there are no other tenants in the building at this time. Employee parking is identified on the southern portion of the building that's existing. There are only 2 employees for this proposed business, and there are only 2 employees right there now. Rental vehicles specifically, they are anticipating having a drop box on the north side of the building for after-hours returns. They are requesting, in their narrative, 4 trucks, although they are showing parking in the southeast corner for 3. They did also include a request for 1 trailer. The trailer has not been identified in the site plan, but it would be required to be adjacent to those trucks if this is the location that would be approved by the Plan Commission. No other sales or services or outdoor storage are included in this request, meaning interior to the building. They are not requesting the opportunity to sell boxes, tape, anything having to do with moving supplies or anything like that. No other services, meaning no vehicle repairs or vehicle maintenance or anything like that. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion for Plan Commission consideration. One other thing to note, if this does move forward, the conditions and restrictions that would be prepared for Plan Commission review would incorporate the number, location, and screening requirements for those rental vehicles and trailer. And it would restrict outdoor storage or display, so none of that would be allowed. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. The applicant like to make any comments? Okay. The applicant indicated no. So we will go right to the commission, beginning on my left with Commissioner Hannah.
I have no comments, actually.
And no comments.
No comments.
No comment.
No questions, thank you.
Just a quick question for Carrie. Is this good? This would be similar to the one that we recently approved on 27th Street. It's a different business that would just like to store rental vehicles.
Need to make a clarification that the Plan Commission made that recommendation for council approval on the 27th Street application. The council did not approve that conditional use permit. There are different circumstances for that are distinguished from this particular application, in that this request is located in an M1 district in a multi-tenant building. It is within an M1 district, if you will, meaning that there are multiple buildings in the area that are in the M1 zoning district. They're not in an industrial park per se, but it's in that area. There's no commercial use of the property at this point. It is set back from the road. All of the requirements for screening would be part of this conditional use permit, but it would be screening from adjacent M1 district properties. So there are circumstances in this application to distinguish from the previous application.
Thank you. No other questions then. So we'll look for a motion on 7E.
Seifert moves that the Planning Commission recommends that the Common Council approve a conditional use permit for vehicle rentals on the property of, or on the portion of the properties at 1155 West Anderson Court after a public hearing and subject to conditions and restrictions that will be prepared for the Plan Commission review at the next meeting, April 25th, 2023.
Kuzikowski, a second.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Chandler.
Chandler, aye.
And, okay, we're going, which way? Anna, aye.
Shinsky, aye.
Laura Guy.
Kuzikowski, aye.
Seifert, aye.
Item 7F is a minor land division lot line adjustment. Review a certified survey map submitted by Christopher Fink, combining the properties at 7101 and 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue. Carrie.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. These properties are both zoned B2. There is an existing residence that's on the property that is used partially for the business and partially for a residence. The proposal is to combine both those properties into a single lot. The lot would be conforming to dimensional requirements. The official map and the road dedication are shown. The official map actually includes more than what would be required along Pennsylvania Avenue. So there is the distinction that the official map as shown is included on the certified survey map. However, only a portion of that is being proposed for dedication for public street purposes. And that is at the direction of the engineering department for what would be required for future right-of-way along Pennsylvania Avenue. While it's not part of this request, an official map amendment for the area may be forthcoming in the near future to kind of bring that official map in alignment to what is really more of a realistic future anticipated use for that right-of-way. There is one requirement for the signature page to be updated. It does need to include the council acceptance of the dedication of that right-of-way along Pennsylvania Avenue. Otherwise, there are no other requirements except for any kind of minor corrections that might be required that we did not see. This is the proposed certified survey map that has been presented, and you will notice that 5 feet, again, along Pennsylvania Avenue is being dedicated for public street purposes. With that information, there is a suggested motion on the screen for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I will open the floor to the applicant if they wish to make any comments. Okay. The applicant indicated they will wait for questions, so we will go right to commission, starting on my right with Commissioner Chandler.
Just a quick question for Carrie. I may have missed it. Could you share why these properties are being combined again?
They're being combined into a single lot for use by a single entity, meaning the property owner wishes to combine them for a development of a currently developed property. So without getting into too many details, there already is a house and it's being used for both residence and business purposes. This allows both of those properties to be utilized as a single property.
Thank you.
I have no questions at this time.
No questions, it looks good.
No questions.
Nothing here.
Pretty straightforward, so I have no other questions either. We'll look for a motion on item 7F.
Guzekowski will make a motion that Plan Commission recommends to the Common Council that the certified survey map submitted by Christopher Fink for the properties at 7101 and 7115 South Pennsylvania Avenue be approved with the following conditions. One, that all Common Council approval includes acceptance of public right-of-way dedication. 2, that all technical corrections, including but not limited to spelling errors, minor coordinate geometry corrections, and corrections required for compliance with the municipal code with the Wisconsin statutes are made prior to recording.
Seipert seconds.
Roll call beginning with Commissioner Hanna.
Anna, I.
Jazinski, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski.
Seipert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
Thank you. That will bring us to item 7G, plan review. Review site, building, and related plans submitted by Nick Young, F Street, OCLV, NT LLC for single-family attached buildings, townhomes on the property at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway. Carrie?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are talking about Lakeshore Commons, and this is part of the traditional neighborhood development plan unit development for that. The proposal includes 2 8-unit townhome buildings and 2 6-unit townhome buildings. It is in the location along East Lake Vista Parkway. That's the entrance to both the development and Lake Vista Park. Previously, there had been, the original plan showed 9 2-family villas, and this would be replacing that plan with these townhome units. So they're similar to the townhomes that are adjacent to the apartments in the center of the development that had been previously approved in terms of configuration and in terms of number. There are some slight differences in terms of architecture and in terms of color. So on the screen right now, this is showing the location of where these townhomes are proposed, again, replacing those side-by-side single-family attached units. And just to clarify, the orange box on the left is identifying the 8-unit buildings. The purple box on the right is identifying the proposed 6-unit buildings. And each of those buildings has an N unit that's split as upper and lower, again, similar to the existing townhomes that are being constructed. On the screen right now are the elevations for the 8-unit buildings. These are proposed to have similar building materials to those that are on the property already. So engineered wood panel siding, engineered wood vertical board and batten siding, and windows throughout all of these elevations. I'm only including the north and south elevations for these buildings. The side elevations are a little bit difficult to incorporate onto the screen, but just know that they are included in your packets. You did have some updated plans that were provided prior to this meeting. One of the differences between these townhome buildings and the existing townhome buildings, there are no second-story balconies, but there are first-floor patios for these units. The rear or south elevations of these buildings have the attached 2-car garages. Each unit has 2-car garages, a 2-car garage attached to the unit. There are no other parking stalls. However, there are parking pads at the entrance to the garages themselves. They're not real full parking pads as they're only about 12 feet deep, but they're a little bit wide. There are like low retaining walls in between the garages. So there could theoretically be a vehicle that could park parallel to the garage if necessary. And although I'm not showing it on the screen, there is one residential mailbox cluster that is at the southeast corner of one of those 6-unit townhome buildings that is at the end. Well, it's accessed by the private alleyway off of a public street. So that public alleyway that private alleyway is 20 feet wide and must remain completely clear at all times for emergency access purposes. So we do have a recommendation in the staff report for those mailboxes to be set maybe a couple of feet back just to ensure that there is sufficient space for snow clearing. The 6-unit buildings are similar to the other townhomes. Again, there might be a little bit of a color palette change between the two. Same kind of architecture. Again, 2-car garages attached on the rear. Turning now to the renderings of the proposed units. This is what would be seen as you enter in from Lake Vista Parkway. And just a head-on view of those units. Side view. And another side view, these are the 6 units. It does appear that the dimensional standards are met in the proposal. The minimum parking requirement, just for edification, is 2 per unit, even though there are some units that have 3 bedrooms. And there is no on-street parking that has been incorporated into the parking calculations for this. With that in mind, there is a suggested motion for Plan Commission consideration on the screen. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to say anything? Just wait for questions. Okay. We will go to the commission, beginning on my right with Commissioner Chandler.
I do have a question for the applicant.
Katie Menakis, Rinka 756 North Milwaukee.
Can you share some details about the color changes?
Sure. To offer a variety of looks, we have both of the palettes that face Lake Vista Parkway. There are 2 palettes that face that, and then there are also 1 palette that are under construction right now. So it's just a range it's similar material finishes, but just to offer some diversity.
Okay, and then a question about the patio and no balcony. So can you provide some feedback why is that the lower level will have the patio and the second level would not have a balcony?
Sure. This product is for rental, and the ones that are under construction now are for purchase. So this was more of an effort to offer variety and also offer something that's a little bit more affordable.
Thank you.
Okay, I have a question. Are there basements under these units?
These are all slab on grade.
All slabs?
Mhm.
Okay. And what are the width of the alleys that you have for these? Is it that 16 feet or 20 feet?
When we went from the attached villas to the larger buildings, the multifamily townhomes, we increased the width from 16 to 20. So that went through the fire approval process. And plats were revised, everything's coordinated to accept this size building.
Thank you. That's it.
This looks good to me.
Nothing from me, thank you.
I actually have a couple of comments, not necessarily questions. When I kind of looked at this right away, it seems to me like a block. There is nothing really aesthetic about it. It's just like a very long range of stack of buildings. There is no movement or anything. It's just a big block. This is around the lake, a big park, and now I have very dark colors that stand out from a very big green space. So for me, these are very dark colors that doesn't blend with the environment you're in. The staggered long line is actually also not allowing the beautiful view of the lake, where those are supposed to be the drawing part of that environment of that expensive housing. Again, it's not showing here. It's just kind of a blob of housing. Here you go, this and that's it. Personally, I would not even think about purchasing. And I've seen the one on the lake. Like I drive a lot by this area, and I don't know how is this being situated. What are they looking at? So it's just my feedback. So I have no questions. Just my comments on what I see.
May I respond a
Yes,
little
of
bit?
course. Yes,
Okay.
go for it.
Noting the dimensions of the lots that were predetermined, they're 90-foot lots, whether it's a townhome or a single family or a villa, or, you know, there was kind of a module set. If these remained the attached villas or single families or townhomes, there's not that much range that we can offer variation, which is why we kind of designed these with the repetition that we did and the way that we broke the buildings down, offering sight lines through there. So that was our attempt for that. Also, the material palettes and the materials offered in the townhomes are the same or similar to all the palettes that are offered in the single family. So when it's all built with the multiple phases, everything will be coherent and complementary.
To each other, but not to the environment they're in. Correct, but not to the green, big, huge park that they actually took some of it out to put this in. So it doesn't blend in. It doesn't become part of it. It's just a big brick piece, unless someone in the back wants it. And you're right, and I understand you want to get the big bucks out of your money by trying to fit as much as building those little or little flat that you have, but you end up with that big line.
Thank you. I have no questions. I mean, I agree, looking at the single families, will fit in with the other buildings. It's a good mix, offering a slightly lower price tag unit for people that want to move into this community. So I personally like the look of it. Looks a little more modern to me. So I'm definitely a fan. Any other questions, concerns from the commission?
Staff just has one
Sure.
comment. We did
Sure,
notice,
Chief.
we did notice as we were driving through the development that the existing townhomes that are under construction, the garage elevations did look very, very dark. We recognize that it's also still under construction, so that may not be the final material palette, but is that really the final color that we're seeing?
I have material samples if you want to pass around. The color palettes, the two tagged on the left are the fronts and the two on the back are the ones on the right. And these will be facing, the rears, which are darker, do face the rears of single families and attached villas in the phase 2.5. So it will just be an alley, similar conditions with smaller buildings across the alley. Does anyone want to see material?
Sure, we can pass that. While we're doing that, does Fire have anything to add?
Good evening, Chairman Lorick and Commissioners. Mike Havey, Oak Creek Fire. Nothing really to add at this point. I think the site plan that we reviewed, we increased with access, and we've also worked with engineering to have a temporary road installed from Fifth Avenue during the construction phase. So their access is not restricted because there's phasing of these projects, so the roadway access is going to be critical during the construction phase.
Based on what's being passed around, I just want to make sure I'm understanding. So all the items on the right of that sample, so those are what materials to be used where? And then the ones on the left, could you just kind of go through that?
Sure. The two that are tagged here are the two color palettes that go with the rear colors. So the fronts are on the right, left, and then the darks are on the right, on the rear of the buildings. So buildings 5 and 6, this snowscape white would be, if you want to, I'm sorry, pull up the rendering. The lighter color is this white color on the fronts, and then the back of those buildings of 5 and 6 are this steel color. So it's a combination per building. So that we have the two larger buildings are the lighter, and then the two smaller buildings are the slightly darker.
Thank you.
Staff's concerned, are the garage doors are black? So does it all just blend?
It looked like it was all one just dark wall. So the suggestion would just be if you could vary up the color on the rear somehow, whether that's through the use of a slightly different color on the garage door itself, or, just a suggestion that maybe it'll break it up a little bit more.
Unfortunately, this palette is pretty limiting on if you look at just even the grays, some are more green, some are more gray, some are more blue, and they complement each other pretty limited. So with analysis that we've kind of looked at all of these combinations throughout all of them, these are the ones that we felt complemented each other in context the most.
Any other questions, concerns? Otherwise, we'll look for a motion.
I do have a question. I'm going back to these colors, because when you made the comment earlier that you're showing a variety of different colors, my interpretation was that from the paperwork we have, which use more tan on the property, and this one's using more of the dark blues. So the variety, I thought, was the mix of those two. But you're just using the dark, or the dark and the darker blues is the variety that you're referring to?
There are two palettes. Two of the buildings are one palette, two of the buildings are another palette. So one is white and a gray, and one is a desert stone, which is kind of a beige and a darker.
Okay, so they're both tan and gray. It's just one is a lighter one and one is darker.
I guess it depends on how you describe the colors. It's a little hard because, but yeah, these two would go together and these two would go together. So they're both have a light and a dark, but there are two color combinations for each.
And I hear you, but once again, with the information we receive, it's a totally different look.
I think the issue, Commissioner Chandler, is that sometimes the renderings and the print materials don't necessarily match exactly what the color palettes are in the material samples. So we are getting a little bit of a variation between what is being shown for the samples, which is actually that's what's going to be on the buildings versus what is limited for screen projection, for print materials with the copiers that we have. I think that's where the variation is coming into play.
Okay. And the only reason I bring that up, because based on the print that we saw, it's a lot lighter. And to the commissioner's comments, it would blend a lot better versus the darks, because they're just standing out. So that was my interpretation, that the brownish colors to bring out the nature and the natural part was the colors that we were going to see. That's why I'm asking those questions. But it looks totally different.
Other comments while we're at it?
Harry, would you mind please just going back to the back of the building? Because you had mentioned is there anything we can do about the changing the color? Because it looks like the garage door and the siding are similar or the same color based upon how it printed, but is that actually what they're using?
The ground floor is lighter, and the garage doors are lighter.
They're lighter than...
And the upper floor that is darker.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And there's a change in plane. It's hard with an elevation to understand the relief there.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Last call for any comments. Otherwise, we will look for a motion.
Guzekowski makes a motion that the Plan Commission approves the site and building plan submitted by Nick Jung for F Street OCLV NT LLC for 2 8-unit townhomes and 2 6-unit townhomes on the property of 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of traditional neighborhood development planned unit development CND PUD remain in effect. 2, that the snow storage plan is submitted for review and approval by the Department of Community Development prior to submission of permit applications. 3, that all technical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building, and rooftop shall be screened from view. 4, that all revised plans, site, building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital format for review by Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications.
And I will second.
Roll call, beginning with Commissioner Kipchinsky.
Shinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Gifford, aye.
Chandler, no.
Anna, no.
That's 4-2, so it passes.
That will bring us to the last item, 7H, which is another plan review. Review site building and related plans submitted by E.J. Herr, F Street Development Group for multifamily residential buildings on the property at 4005 East Lake Vista Parkway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are still in Lakeshore Commons, and we are going to be talking about 2 more apartment buildings that are on the south side of this development. And we're calling them the north and south just because they are numbered as A 8.3 and A 7.1, so it's a little bit confusing. We're just going to call them north and south for this discussion. The north building will have 57 units and 4 stories. Included in the building are a lobby, leasing area, club room, theater room, mail room, rooftop balcony. The rooftop balcony is particularly interesting and fantastic to see because it provides those wonderful views of the lake from a very unique vantage point. The south building will have 77 units and 4 stories. That will also include a lobby, mail room, dog wash, and fitness center. So as you can see, north and south, the site plan is a little bit difficult to project on the screen to get you an idea of exactly the full scale of it, but we'll break it down a little bit. We also have the number of bedrooms per configuration. So we have 24 total junior one-bedrooms in the south building, a combination of 54 one-bedroom units in both the buildings, 8 one-bedroom with den configurations. We have 32 bedroom units across the buildings, 3 that will have dens, and a total of 15 units that are 3-bedroom. So we have parking for both of the buildings underneath as well as on surface lots. There are 45 underground or podium parking stalls for the north building, 35 surface stalls, and then we have 50 underground or podium parking stalls for the south building and 55 surface stalls. And this is for the building, 55 surface stalls for that building. Rather than break these down, we are just going to go quickly through the elevations because I think the renderings actually give you a better idea of what the building itself will look like. So this is for the north building. Just going to go quickly through this. There we go. The exterior building materials for both are incorporating fiber cement panels, windows, sliding glass doors, and metal balconies and screens. The metal balconies actually mimic wood look for many of these screening items. And in this elevation, you can see that rooftop balcony. Again, the south building kind of mirrors the north building, except for that rooftop balcony configuration. And on the south building, we do have a screen wall that we're going to talk a little bit about, and that's facing Lake Vista Boulevard. So the first rendering, we want to just give you an idea of what the balconies and the dividing screens kind of look like, because on the elevations, it's a little bit difficult to see. So these are metal balconies, but they have that wood look divider in between so that it gives a little bit more privacy between the units. And this is that privacy screen that would be seen from the public street on the south. Mentioned in the staff report as being over 13 feet tall and set fairly close to that public street, that sidewalk really. This has been changed. Those plans that are in front of you now were a little bit revised based on what was received in the packets prior. We received these today, so we haven't had a lot of opportunity to take a look at these. So this screen wall may require a little bit more conversation, but the overall plans with the buildings and such does not change staff's recommendation with the conditions of approval. Again, showing a different elevation for that building. Turning around, this is the entry from the south. Going north on the public main road, Breakwater Boulevard. And this is what would be seen on the north of the building that shows that rooftop balcony. That's only access from the interior. There is a rooftop access that goes up to that area. The floor plans that were provided in your packets show the kind of narrow walkway. It's narrow in terms of the overall width of the roof, getting to this rooftop balcony, which is about 400 square feet. So there is a suggested motion in 3 parts. Just want to make sure that everybody is aware that while we did see signs on the buildings, they are placeholders because we don't have details for those at this time. A master sign plan will be required at a later date. The trash, you will notice there are no enclosures that are proposed. Those trash receptacles will be in the buildings themselves. They'll be wheeled out just like the other buildings. Bike storage is interior. We do have bike racks proposed near the entries to the buildings. We're asking for a contingency parking plan as we have in the previous the previous review for the apartments in the development. We do need to have one thing kind of just clarified. The plans showed that there were 75 units and we counted 77. Don't know if that's just a typo, but that's where that parking variation is coming from as well. We do have a little bit of a concern that there are 185 parking stalls that are provided for the two buildings, which is a little bit less than what would be required if there are 77 units. And it's a little bit less than also what would be required if we were talking about one parking stall per bedroom, even though the development only requires 1.4 parking stalls per unit. The only reason we bring this up is because we don't have a whole lot of extra parking for the development outside of the individual development areas. On-street parking is not included in this. And the reason that this was brought up in the report is just because on-street parking in winter months is going to be restricted, so that's just something to keep in mind. We do have a recommended condition or a suggested motion for approval for Plan Commission consideration. Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Does the applicant wish to make any comments?
Just a clarification, there are 57 on the north building units and 75 in the south, so a total of 132. I'm not sure if the 77 in the south building was, if some of those are like a club room. There are only 132 total units.
Just need you on the mic.
Name?
My name is Chen Liu and design director at Rinka. So 75 units on the south building. On the third level and the fourth level, there's a unit combined, 2 units together.
So that's where the wrinkle comes in. We had plans that showed the same floor plan for 2 through 4. So if there's a change on one of those floors, it wasn't reflected in the plans that we received. So that's where the discrepancy is coming from. So thank you for that clarification.
Sorry about that.
It for now. Okay. We'll go right to commission then, starting on my left with Commissioner Hannah.
Well, it's the same comment for me. There is a lot of building and less landscaping. The landscaping here is very small. It's just around the terrace area and a couple of trees. There is not more building than percentage-wise than landscaping. It's just too much material than in a park. It was originally a park, so the perception of even the Oak Creek or anybody coming from outside near a lake, it's just too much concrete, too much material. So that's my comment as previously.
Yeah, thank you for the comment. Chad Griswold, 756 North Milwaukee Street. I think one of the ideas about this development, this particular parcel and where these homes are weren't part of the park. The park, Lake Vista Park, is a separate parcel from where the development is happening. And I think what we're trying to do is create the density, much like you would see in a traditional neighborhood, where a lot of people can live in this environment. They can enjoy the park because there is such a large area of park around this. We have the lakefront, we have all the trails, we have, of course, Lake Vista Park, Bender Park, the new park that's going to just to the north of here, which we're really excited about. So I think the idea is to, of course, create a lot of shared space so that the people who are living in these residences in a slightly denser community than you might see in other areas of Oak Creek, but because we have such a great green space and great amenity around there, we're able to, increase that density in certain areas so that they can enjoy that.
Perfect. This is how, I want to be on the mic. This is how I actually looked at that. If this is the plan sheet that you attached, okay, here. I don't know if you guys can see that. It's the second page.
Yep.
So this is the 2 buildings we're talking about, right?
You got it.
See how much of a green space you have around here? And look at the percentage of building you have comparing to that green. You have combined or kind of plotted all of that building in one area. See how the percentage is overtaking the green. So what I'm saying, my comments is actually coming from balancing. So if you added some green space and even like spread it around here, it will feel different. It will feel like you're part of it. So just, you are kind of like sucked up the green space out of it and just push everything there. letting people all go walk outside here. You're gonna just, if you wanna walk, go walk outside.
Sure.
So this is how what you just said even come across this way.
No, I respect the opinion. I guess I would say, you know, if you look at the image that you're showing there, and you look at the amount of green space that's on that map, there's a lot of green space. So there are areas that are developable, and this particular parcel happens to be, you know, one of the areas that, you know, where development is allowed. Some of the other green areas on the site are either reserved for park. There are areas that are reserved that we're not able to develop because of other restrictions. And so what we're trying to do is take the areas of the site that are developable and that we can put units on, and, you know, increase the density in those areas so that the green areas of the site can be enjoyed by everybody.
Correct, and I agree with you. It's just, I guess what I'm trying to say in my last comment is just do some attachment, if I want to call it this way, attach it. So attach your allowed developed areas to the green space to the outside. If I go back and look at the screen that Carrie already had up there of those housing. Just one of them, Carrie, doesn't matter what. Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So that's just my point, my personal opinion on all of that. So, and that's all I have. Thank you.
Understood. Thank you.
Nothing from me. Thank you.
Alderman Guzekowski.
Nothing.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned about parking, that you're gonna have a problem primarily during the winter. How do you plan on handling that?
Sure. So the development, as Carrie went through with the parking ratios, we do have 1.4 parking stalls per unit on site. That's combined both between below ground parking and the at grade parking. So we're meeting the zoning requirement on that. You know, I would also note that, you know, another metric that a lot of developers use is parking stalls. 1-bedroom units, you know, one stall per unit is pretty typical, and then in 2- and 3-bedroom units, 2 stalls per unit is pretty typical. And if you use that metric, we're meeting that across the site as well. So we have, you know, 1 stall per 1 bedroom, 2 stalls per 2- and 3-bedroom, or right around that ratio. So we, you know, the developer feels very comfortable with that. Again, you know, there is street parking for ancillary use and guests and things like that. So they feel very comfortable with the ratio.
Still think the area is a little too crowded for that whole setup.
For the PUD, it does require 1.4 parking stalls per unit, and that would require 185 parking stalls based on the information that we received on the number of units. So it does meet the PUD requirements. We just mentioned that, again, as the winter parking comes into effect, we'll need a contingency parking plan. We require the same thing for the other apartment buildings, so that's what we're asking for.
Very good. Any other questions I can answer?
Chandler?
Oh, it's me, okay. Carrie, just a quick question about one area of our packet. It involved that the facade appears flat, so could you provide a little more feedback on that?
Yeah, and I think that had to do with, like we were saying with the previous application with the townhomes, I think the renderings and the printed materials didn't actually provide a good idea of what the depth is, but we received some additional information. So it's just, especially on this particular rendering that's on the screen right now, you can see that those balconies are actually set back from the front plane. You can see it a little bit better than the materials that we received prior. It almost read like a flat wall, but those balconies also on the other side, on the other corner, there we go, on this corner, that's also set behind. So it's kind of, it's more dimensional in these renderings than in the previous. So I think that comment can just be answered with these renderings.
Okay, thanks, Carrie. And then another question for you, Carrie, with this aluminum screening. So with the new renderings received, is this acceptable now?
The acceptableness is actually something the Plan Commission would determine.
Okay.
Staff had made comments on the previous iteration, and we received these today. Unfortunately, we didn't have an opportunity to really dive into these in depth. So I would say that while the screen wall is something that we can continue to work through, it should not be a consideration, it should not be a concern for the Plan Commission moving forward, because I believe that we can get to where we need to be with it. We get and fully support the need and the representation for the wall. It's just a matter of getting to a comparable design for it, a comparable height, just getting everybody on board with where that needs to be. So
I would, I guess I would just echo that, Carrie. I feel that there's flexibility in that area from our standpoint in terms of the design, and we're committed to working with staff to, to get something that everybody's comfortable with.
Okay, and then another question for the applicant. So just wanted to get your feedback in addition to what you were talking about the meeting the requirements for parking. Because based on the information we have, it seems like the parking spaces are smaller than what is to be expected from having those 75 units. Is that correct, Carrie? 188 versus 185?
well, no, because we had floor plans that were incorrect in the
With the
previous
2
iteration.
units.
We had more
Okay.
units that were that we thought were being proposed than are actually being proposed.
Okay.
So they're right at what they are required to have for the PUD. So, and again, that's why we're asking for the contingency parking plan to kind of give us an idea of, if need be, where would the future parking for these units be if it's getting into a situation where we're a little bit cramped.
Thank you.
And, I would just note on the elevations, the south elevation, Carrie, that you were looking at there, we did, and I apologize for the, kind of the last minute, but we take the staff's recommendations very seriously, and that's why the renderings came in at the last minute there, because we were really working to, to add some additional depth and materiality to those elevations per the comments from the staff.
We were working right up to the last minute for this meeting, too.
Oh, one additional question. What will be on the roofs since individuals can now access it? What's the plans up there?
Yeah, we're excited about this element. This is the relatively new code allowance that allows you to access a rooftop deck without that deck actually being considered a story on the building. So it's a really nice feature for the building. It essentially is just going to be a rooftop patio, a rooftop terrace. So there will be furniture up there and other things for the residents to enjoy. The elevator and stair will access that rooftop.
Thank you.
Okay, my 2 cents on it, I'm a fan of the development. I like the look of these buildings. I was not a fan of the previous change on the other multifamily where the wraparound balconies were eliminated. So I do appreciate and I like the addition of this rooftop terrace and the structure around it. It kind of adds a neat little element to it. I just want to make sure I'm looking at this correct. Is that rooftop area overlooking, be looking northeast through the middle of the other 2 multifamily buildings? Is that correct?
You got it. Yep. Yeah, it'll kind of look, the other 2 buildings form the V shape, and this will have the view right through the center of it. So we think it'll be a really dynamic view.
And will that be open to residents of just that building or the other building as well?
Undetermined, but quite likely for this building. There are some shared amenities between the north and the south buildings, so there's a possibility that both could enjoy it.
And then last thing, I'll open up to fire if they have any comments.
Good evening again, Chairman Lorick and Commissioners, Mike Cavey, Oak Creek Fire. The only comment that I'll make is on the rooftop. With that kind of a newer anemone for some of the requests we get, we just stipulate that per fire code, there is no open burn appliances, no gas grills, no charcoal grills. There is nothing that's allowed up besides the furnishings, and none of those activities are We get questions about those at times, but we just reiterate that because it's an elevated building. There is no grills on balconies or above on rooftops. Nothing else.
I would just respond that there's nothing of that nature planned for the rooftop.
Last call for any comments.
I have one question. Are all these buildings sprinkled?
They are. Yep, they're all fully sprinklered and all obviously up to the latest code.
Thank you.
Questions or comments? We'll look for a motion.
I will say that from staff's perspective, with the conditions that have been incorporated and knowing that we will continue to work with the developer through these minor issues with regard to the screen wall, that's not really a huge concern because we know we can get there. The landscaping actually has been increased from previous plans, so while we can continue to work with the developer to increase the landscaping wherever possible, what we've seen, we know we can get there as well. The architecture of the buildings do blend in with the architecture for the rest of the development. And while we do ask for a contingent parking plan or snow removal or storage plans and things like that, those are minor requirements that are also incorporated into the PUD itself. So staff is confident that with these conditions of approval that have been suggested for Plan Commission review, we can get to a plan that meets everybody's needs, meets the needs of the PUD.
Based on what you just said, for me, this is different than the previous one. My concern with this one is the landscape, the added landscape. So not the building, not how much it is. Like I showed you, I showed everyone from the plan view, there was not that much. I know this is more than what previously been shown, but still not enough for this area. So are you saying you're gonna still work with the developer to add more, or what are you saying?
We will work with the developer to increase landscaping wherever we possibly can, but we have identified areas within the PUD itself that are open areas that are incorporated for the entire development. So it's almost like a conservation area for certain parts of the development where we can increase density on a parcel or two and have the open space in a greater area for the rest of the development. So that's part of why the PUD has those conditions in place. It's part of why the general development plan shows those big open areas and then more dense development on certain parcels. So I take your comments to heart. I understand where you're coming from. We will continue to work with the developer wherever we can to increase the landscaping where there are opportunities.
Okay, thanks.
Looking for a motion?
Guzekowski will make a motion that Plan Commission approves the site and building plans submitted by E.J. Her, F Street Development Group for A 8.1 and A 7.3 multifamily residential buildings at on the property at 4005 Lake Vista, East Lake Vista Parkway with the following conditions. 1, that all relevant code requirements and conditions of restrictions and traditional neighborhood development plan unit development TND PUD remain in effect. 2, that a contingent parking plan is provided for review and approval for the Department of Community Development prior to the submission of building permit applications. 3, that the south elevation of buildings A7.3 incorporates facade enhancements similar to other elevations. 4, that the screen that the screen wall on the south is revised to the height not to exceed 4 feet or other height. Do we have to?
In this case, I would just ask if there is a height that would be a maximum the Plan Commission would consider, and if there's a minimum setback that the Plan Commission would consider, understanding that we are still working within a limited area here. I would say that a setback distance of 5 to 10 feet is probably what we're looking at being able to accommodate. but the height of the screen wall, if that's something that the Plan Commission wishes to kind of set at that maximum, maybe we can get a little bit lower than that, but that's what we're looking for in terms of direction here.
Should we leave it at 4 feet? Does that work?
Well, 4 feet is what we were recommending initially, but 4 feet is not what's being shown in the revisions either. So originally it was just over 13 feet, and the revisions are showing 10. So
Okay.
we're just looking at what would be a maximum height that the Plan Commission would be comfortable with in that range, and also, you know, a setback distance. I think we're showing 5 feet now.
There's a requirement in the PD for the parking to be 10 feet off the property line, so we can't have the fence be further than 10 feet, but 5 to 10 is, seems achievable.
So if you want to put the setback as being 5 to 10, we can have that range in there, or if you want to put a range for the height, we can incorporate that as well. We just want to know what the parameters are that the Plan Commission is comfortable with, so we're not going in a direction that would be, you know, contradictory to what the Plan Commission would have requested.
I just have a question. Why is the wall so tall?
The wall is intended to actually kind of provide a screen for the parking lot there from the public street. So we completely support that, but it's just a matter of getting to the height that we all feel is appropriate.
I guess I would support not to exceed 10 feet, only because I'm not a tall person, but I'm taller than 4 feet, so I would see right over it, so it wouldn't really be a screening fence. If it was only 4 feet tall, you'd see right over it.
I would actually suggest a range because there are people who are taller than others. So I would say from maximum to 9 feet, range from 6 to 9 feet. Range like that, so.
My question would be, because it may be 4 feet, but is the elevation where the sidewalk is going to be, is it 2 or 3 feet lower?
It's not much different.
It's not much different,
No.
okay.
Is there landscaping proposed in front of the screening wall? So what is the max height on the landscaping? I would imagine we'd want to take that into consideration.
Combination of architectural and landscape screening, so we've set back enough to have ample landscape. I believe our responses offered height for mature trees. If not, we can get that, or not trees, but the plantings have a maximum mature height that is appropriate to be in front of a screen, 6, 9, 10 feet.
So should
Why do we
make
need
it
a
10
fence
feet?
and trees? Help me understand.
So part of it is, and I don't want to speak for the developer, but I think part of it is to incorporate an element that would be there year-round, providing screening, number one. Number two, providing an artistic method of achieving that screening. Number two, softening that screening so that in the months where we have the landscaping, it provides that more natural area, provides a little bit more buffering. It makes it a little bit of a nicer experience for those who may be on the sidewalk. Those kinds of things are all incorporated into having both a screen wall and the landscaping. And it's not a solid wall either, so that's why we have the artistic element that's incorporated into it. But what struck staff again was the height and the proximity to the sidewalk, which again has been pushed back a little bit. So if we have a range of 5 to 10 feet, if the Plan Commission is comfortable with that, at a height not to exceed, I'm hearing 9 or 10 feet. I think we can work within that range too, just need that direction.
I think a range is good, so you can work within that.
Suggested 5 to 10 for the setback and 9 or 10 for the maximum height.
As listed or stated by Alderman Lorik.
Max of 10 feet, okay with everybody? Knowing
Yes.
we can go in a range? Okay.
Feet
10 feet.
Maximum.
maximum. Setback,
5 to 10. Setback of 5 to 10 feet from the sidewalk, maximum height of 10 feet. We can work within those parameters.
Okay.
If the Plan Commission is comfortable with that, staff can definitely work within those parameters.
Overall design and materials incorporate artistic decorative elements that complement the development. 5, that the landscaping plan is revised to include an increased planting area in front of the relocated screen wall on the south. 6, that the exposed concrete walls incorporate textures, design elements. Blank or non-textured concrete walls are not approved. 7, that all mechanical equipment, transformers, and utility boxes, ground building and rooftop shall be screened from view. And 8, that all revised plans, site, building, landscaping, etc., are submitted in digital format for review to the Department of Community Development prior to submission of building permit applications.
Chandler seconds.
Roll call. I will start. Lorick, aye.
Guzekowski, aye.
Seifert, no.
Chandler, aye.
And no.
Shinsky, aye.
Okay, before we end this particular item, we do have a requirement, and I will just remind everybody that if you are going to vote no, you have to cite the code sections on which you're basing your decision. I know we've been a little bit relaxed in that regard, but we do need to start incorporating those code sections on which you're basing your denial.
So when I say no, what is exactly the code section I have to go back and refer to?
You have to cite what code section you are basing your denial on, so that would be something that you would have to include.
For exactly the landscaping and the percentages, should I go back into that attachment and look for it, or?
If there is a section of the PUD that you think this does not adhere to, then you would cite that section of the PUD or the code section under which you think it's not actually adhering to the requirements.
I'm not familiar with that, so I would think I need your help and guidance how to do that.
Well, if you're citing the entirety of the landscape code, then you would be Is there a certain section of the code that you think is not being followed? Is it,
The percentage, how much there is.
well, the percentage is based on the PUD. So the overall percentage that's allowed for in the PUD is
met.
There's a requirement for the entire PUD to have 30% open and green space.
So that's what I'm saying, the percentage has been met for the PUD?
Yes, because these plans conform to the general development plan that took those percentages into consideration.
So when I say no, I do not think, even though the PUD said it has been met, and I think still that there is more needed, I have to say yes, or I have to vote yes?
You have to state the code section that you think is not being followed.
I don't have any code that has not been followed.
Then you think that the PUD is not being followed for landscaping. You don't think that the plan conforms to the open space and landscaping requirements in the PUD?
You're telling me that it is followed.
I'm asking the question as to whether or not you agree with that.
According to what you're telling me, it is.
Okay, so, but you think that there's not enough landscaping is what you're saying?
Yes.
Commissioner Seifert, do you have a code? Do you have a code reference as to why a vote of no?
Yeah, I looked at just the layout of it, and I'm looking at condensed, it's just overcrowded. I think that we're exceeding our people requirement per square foot.
So density. You think the density is that what I'm hearing, density?
Right.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you for clarifying that, Carrie.
Thank you. The item did pass, however, on 4-2.
Okay. That brings us to announcements and adjournment. Carrie, I think you have one announcement.
We do have an announcement. I would like to introduce everybody to Sylvia Bruckert, who is our new zoning administrator and planner. I am so happy that she is here. You have no idea.
Congratulations.
This is her second day, so we've been throwing her right into the fire, but I'd like to give her the opportunity to say hi.
Hello, just wanted to introduce myself and just say good to meet everyone and excited to be working with the city of Oak Creek.
Welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to have you.
So you'll be seeing her on a more occurring basis here, and we'll be sure to get her right into the report writing as soon as we can possibly do that. But you'll see her around City Hall quite a bit. You'll see her in meetings, and she is an essential part of this department. So we are just thrilled to have her here. I hope I'm not overstating it, but seriously, thrilled to have you here. That's all I have.
Okay. Thank you, Carrie. With that, we will look for an adjournment.
Seifert moves to adjourn the meeting at 7:37.
Guzekowski will second.
Roll call beginning with Alderman Guzekowski.
Aye.
Seifert, aye.
Chandler, aye.
And I.
Shinsky, aye.
Lorick, aye.